right, afternoon. I'm going to talk to you today about long-lived teams and why they're damaging to your organisation. I'm Alun Coppack, Principal Consultant with Equal Experts. This isn't an AI talk, and just to get that out of the way in case anyone's hoping for that, but just a couple of notes on AI. There is one image in this entire presentation which is not generated by AI, although it looks a bit touched up because it's a few years ago, but that one's real. And none of the content is AI generated except for that text, which I haven't read yet, but I asked Gemini to give me a blurb for myself. So, a bit about myself, 20 years plus working in software product delivery, been in teams, managed teams, manipulated teams. So this is all my experience, my opinion, what I've seen in a couple of decades of industry in the UK and Australia, as you might be able to tell. So this first picture, I think the AI did a pretty good job on this. Just need a quick sense check with the audience. Does anybody not know what this is supposed to be? Okay, got to know the kind of average age of the audience now. For me, the reason I chose this image is, for me, this was peak millennium for me. This was Friday, Saturday night with my friends. You get in the car, you drive to what purports to be Blockbuster Video. You're looking around the shelves at the new releases. 1999, I had to look back and check. Sixth Sense maybe, Fight Club, The Matrix. You order some pizza, you go home and you get to watch a movie. If you're not going to the cinema, that was how you consumed films, through VHS rental. Now, the interesting thing about Blockbuster is, actually, this is one fact I didn't know beforehand, but they turned down an offer from Warner Brothers to do exclusive rentals of DVDs. They weren't interested. VHS was printing cash for them. They didn't need DVDs. A few years later, I think perhaps more famously, and I think a few people probably know this, but Blockbuster had a chance to buy a new startup called Netflix for $50 million, and the CEO, John Antioco, laughed them out of the door, saying his belief was that the dot-com hysteria is completely overblown, and Blockbuster didn't need to change what they were doing. They were onto a winning formula. Netflix now, of course, worth £400 billion, and Blockbuster nowhere. John and his team were convinced they didn't need to change. They had a perfect model. They had willing customers who would come and rent VHS, and crucially, Blockbuster wasn't a rental company, they were a late fee company. They made their money when people returned the movies late. And they didn't see the value in adding new ideas or changing their team. They had 9,000 stores globally, and it wasn't like Blockbuster stopped overnight. There was a many-year gradual decline. No sudden realization that they'd got it wrong, that they hadn't moved, but definitely the team, the leadership weren't interested in bringing in new ideas, weren't interested in change, and in the end, we don't see these stores around anymore. Now, there's lots of other examples of this in industry. Companies like Kodak, BlackBerry, Nokia, MySpace. Given the lack of show of hands earlier, I think this audience is probably familiar with all those as well. But it extends to other areas as well. I think for me, a couple of examples in music. Bands like U2 and Guns N' Roses, if anyone saw recent Wembley reviews, they peaked some time ago and haven't really changed formula much. There's been I think in most people's eyes, a steady decline since then. So what actually is wrong with long-lived teams? So wrong is not a terribly descriptive word. So more explicitly, there's 6 things for me that sum it up. One is that they stop adding value. And the second one is that they no longer match the enterprise architecture in the organization in which they work. The team structure, without change, the team structure can tend to move away from what's best for the organization. The teams over time no longer have the right skills they need. the needs of what the team needs in order to deliver change, and it's unlikely that the people on the team at the beginning continue to have those skills throughout the lifespan of the team. This one, knowledge and expertise lock up. Without movement of staff between teams, you centralize knowledge, you don't get to share it with the rest of the organization. It's very easy to create an echo chamber as well within the team without new ideas coming in. And this one, actually, sometimes just a long-lived team stops being fun. You have personality clashes or other forms of fatigue. Now, some of you at this point might be wondering what happened to me in the past to have such a hatred of long-lived teams, and surely that's not the case. I've been in some wonderful teams. I've worked with many, many teams. But I've also started to recognize this pattern of a long-lived team starting to either damage the organization or stop giving the value that it once did. And I say this from the perspective of having been in some of these teams myself, and being very happy working in a high-performing team with a group of colleagues, became friends that I really enjoyed my time with. And it's very easy to get into a groove and be happy, and that initial feeling you had when you delivered something amazing, it can persist, and you think you're still doing the right thing. But I'm trying to learn to take a slightly different perspective on things. And I also have to add that I've been a little bit clickbaity with the title of my talk here because there's a word missing, and that's stable. So long-lived stable teams is what I'm really talking about. And stable where the people in the team do not change over time. And the reason I mention stable is because I am a firm believer in team ownership of product services, in an organization, when you're creating value through services and products, those are always owned by a team. The challenge is when the makeup of that team is static, it remains stable. And the analogy here is with the ship of Theseus. It's a thought experiment talking about what if all the elements of the ship, the mast and the planks, are replaced over time, is it still the same ship? And I think it's an interesting thought experiment, but for me, the most important thing is that a concept of the ship still exists, and it is there to shepherd and look after those products and services which are produced. A Trigger's broom is there for anybody who, like myself, lacked a classical education. It's an Only Fools and Horses reference, which again, I'm Australian, so it's passed me by as well. There's another good example of this that I came across called the Ise Temple in Japan. So this is a temple of worship which is deliberately torn down and reconstructed every 20 years. The idea being that the parts of the building wear out, and there's a desire to keep the building operating at peak capacity, operating as best it can, and to provide the best experience for people going there. So there's a recognition that if nothing is done, the temple falls into disarray, so that it's deliberately torn down and recreated every 20 years. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at this problem, to take those deliberate proactive steps to improve things. Just a note, Daniel Tierhaus North has been advocating recently a model of fluid teams where, and to quote, each quarter the entire program team, anything from 20 to 200 people, reorganize themselves based on the expected demand for the next quarter. Now, I think that's probably a step too far, and I think there's some challenges with what happens to those services and products that have been created in that quarter if the entire team is disbanded. So I'm not pushing for that kind of an extreme approach. But which I guess leads into what is long-lived. Now, I'm not going to be prescriptive. I'm simply put, I'm talking about a team that's outstayed their welcome. So if teams that persist in a stable structure and they're no longer able to do what they originally set out to deliver, that's the problem that I'm trying to address here. Now that could be a number of months, it could be a few years. I think that if you see the team value lessen in a shorter time period than that, it might be it might be an indication that you've got some leadership challenges in your organization, that you're changing direction too frequently, that you don't have a stable strategy. Maybe that will change in the future with AI and we're able to deliver things faster. I said I wasn't going to talk about AI. But yeah, it's a team that's out there. There's a lot of AI-generated images in this presentation. So that's someone that's outstayed their welcome, apparently. So the 6 problems. First one is value. I found this quote from someone called Tyler Durden. I'm not sure where it's actually from. I don't think I'm supposed to talk about it. But on a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. And I'm equating this with the idea that the value that a team delivers is eventually going to hit 0. It might be months or many, many years, but without change, the team is not going to continue to deliver the value that it was set up to deliver in the first place. And so I think when a team is stood up, there's normally there's often a very clear a product to produce, an idea that needs to be tested, a burning platform that needs to be replaced, and as in most rational organizations, there's a business case that underpins that. So setting up the team and funding the team makes sense to deliver the business case. Now, what I see often is that over time, the fact that team was set up, and it ends up persisting. The inertia is too great to remove it, and the value that team delivers reduces massively over time. And I think that perhaps there are some instances where this isn't the case. I think maybe in a very high-performing organization, probably a small one, where a team is working to an outcome-driven remit, which is quite abstract, like let's make things wonderful for our customers. That can be an outcome that you have for decades, and you continually change what you're doing. But I think in my experience, and maybe this is just the organizations I've worked in, the outcome is normally a lot more focused. And I'll use the example of building a timesheet system a few more times. So even if the outcome of your team is to make timesheets easy, if you're investing £1 million a year in a team, you probably get to a point after a little while that you've seen as much value from that investment, or you're rapidly into diminishing returns. So that's the problem of a lack of value delivery for a long-lived team. Second one I wanted to talk about is architectural misalignment. And this one is difficult to spot inside the team, I think. I'll use the timesheet example again to explain what I mean here. So you might set off with your team. It's been set up. You've got a nice bounded context around the timesheet system that you're delivering. You've done a really, really great job, and the system's been delivered. And then there's another project that comes along, another product that's being built to develop an invoicing tool. And it has many of the same users because the same people are submitting timesheets and submitting invoices. And now you start to find that your team, the timesheet team and the invoicing team, are spending half your week talking to each other, trying to manage dependencies, because you're both working with the same people, so there's an identity, a credential need for the timesheets, for the new invoicing team. So I think when you start to see that the number of dependencies that your team has creeps up, and that the nature of those dependencies make it really difficult for either team, for you and any other team to move forward at pace, I think that can be an indication that architecturally the domain in which you're working has changed, and maybe it's not a separate timesheet and invoicing team. Maybe you should be one team, and then the handoff on dependencies decreases. Maybe even there's a separate identity team that needs to be created, and that's where that provides a nice, robust interface, and the timesheeting and the invoicing teams can communicate together. So yeah, that's what I mean by architectural misalignment. And that's, again, this is something which happens over time, and it takes work to recognize that. Software architecture misalignment, this is really just the team not having the skills anymore to do what they set out to do. So with the timesheet example, you've got users who are really, really happy with the first few releases of your product, which is fantastic. They love it. That so much work went into creating a really nice visual experience. The workflow is great. Users love it. In fact, people are now looking forward to the end of the week so they can enter their timesheets. It's such an amazing job that's been done. Some people are using it daily. They can't wait. But it's gotten the attention of the finance team because now they're thinking, hang on, we used to have to chase people at the end of the month to get this data, and then it'd take months to weeks to compile a report and provide information. Now we've got much, much more timely information. We can improve the quality of forecasts, but what we need is to integrate the finance system with your timesheet tool. So this is fantastic news for you and your product manager and the timesheet team. You've got demand that the wider organization is interested in your product, but your next quarter roadmap now, instead of focusing on user interface changes, it's now focused on, or it's now full of work to provide these back-end APIs. Now, if your team has one or two back-end engineers who have the ability to do that, then you're likely to see flow problems in your team because you can't get all this work done where the demand's coming from finance. And I often see teams in this situation, if they kind of muddle through and you get extended timelines for delivery of these features, but the rest of the team, you've got a front-end focused team there, and they don't want to be sitting around doing nothing. They want to be doing work, doing stuff which is perceived to be useful. So you end up building a whole bunch of front-end features because you've got the capability and capacity there, when actually you're only doing that because the team exists, because those people are in the team. And I think, again, it's hard to recognize inside the team, but this is an example where it's a good idea to introspect and think about whether there's change needed. Knowledge lockup, it's probably self-explanatory, but again, I think this is something which is really difficult to recognize internally, but as a team, especially if you're a high-performing team and you're doing great work, you have to be really intentional to get that knowledge, that learning pushed outside of the team. So you end up with either silos of knowledge or silos of expertise. And it's kind of, the rest of the organization can't benefit from the great work that team's done. Echo chamber. Oh, before we go on, does anyone know what's wrong with this image? Anybody? Yes?
Is it not the exact opposite of an echo chamber?
It is. I tried to get a picture of an echo chamber, but it doesn't actually exist. It's not a physical, well, not really. So this is an anechoic chamber, which stops echoes happening, but it's a much better picture. So this problem is, like friend groups, I think long-lived stable teams, they create their own echo chamber. The ideas that led to the team's initial success continue to be championed. What's the point in trying something new if the team's already awesome, if it's already delivering amazing things or has delivered amazing things in the past? I've been inside these teams many times. I see it as a leader outside of the teams. But yeah, I've definitely been part of this problem. You recognize that sometimes if someone new does come into the team and with their new ideas, the rest of the team kind of closes ranks and says, no, we can't do that. We know what the right answer is because we did it 2 years ago, and not recognizing that the world's moved on, the organization's probably changed in that time. So yeah, that act of rejection of new ideas can be incredibly damaging to the organization, and it's damaging to that team as well. And yeah, a lack of innovation as a result. And yeah, I touched on this before, but sometimes long-lived teams are not fun. Even if everyone's happy and you've had a great inception and the team's going well, sometimes they can become toxic. People start to get upset with each other. As human beings working together, it can happen. And the other thing, if a team, even if a team is working really well and everybody's happy, you can find that the team's in a situation where there's constant deadline pressure, fatigue sets in, and people become burnt out, and it's just, yeah, it's not a great place to be as a human being. So, obviously, long-lived teams, stable teams are incredibly bad. So why do we have them in the first place? What causes them to exist? And there's a couple of reasons here. I think first one is it's really expensive to set up a team. In terms of human effort and cost for recruitment, when you're trying to set up your team, you know you want this person on the team, you're begging them to move. It's a costly effort emotionally and in money as well. Lining up everyone to be available, it's tough. It's hard work. So there's a reluctance to change once it's set up. Yeah, sorry, same one. And actually, in a lot of organizations, there's an idea that the things that the organization does are long-lived. So setting up a team to look after that function makes sense, and it's the default operating model. It's just there's a reluctance to change. Overriding all of this is human beings don't like change, especially human beings that seem to work in agile software delivery. It doesn't seem something that comes naturally to most of us. As I said before, there's the feeling of being in a high-performing team. It can be really, really great. You don't want it to change. It takes a lot of work to think about wanting to do something differently. But there's another reason which, for me, is the worst one. Because it's a deliberate. It's done deliberately, and this is this concept, this mantra of bringing the work to the teams. And by this I mean you have a high-performing team. They've demonstrated that they've done great things, and rather than figure out how to spread that to the rest of the organization, unlock that knowledge, unlock that way of working, there can be a desire from the team and also from people around them to find the next big thing for that team to do, find the work, find the next difficult problem, bring it to that group of people so that they can solve it. And I think, it kind of makes sense when I say it like that. And I think that the problem I see with this is that, another reason this is done is, I think, a pushback against a historic idea that teams were spun up for project work, very small pieces of work, and we've moved away from, a lot of organizations moving away from project thinking to product thinking, where you have that long-lived product idea. As I said, I think that's fantastic. It just doesn't need to have the same people in that product team to make it work. So when you have that idea that this team is really great and you bring the work to them, the new work coming in, unless it's the exact same shape as the previous work, it's unlikely that team is the right group of is the best group of people in the organization to make it work. And I think that's the reason why this mantra I find so damaging. There was a really good example of this. I worked with an amazing high-performing team at HMRC a few years ago, and amazing group of people, and the team delivered the initial piece of work. Well, they iterated their product for 6 to 9 months. It was going really well, great feedback, and the demand for new work in the organization at that particular time didn't match the shape of that team. And there was massive reluctance from the team to split up that group of people and have them share that knowledge across the rest of the organization. It can be really sad because it's a group of people that are demonstrably delivering really well and having a great time, but I think sometimes the needs of the organization often the needs of the organization won't match what that individual team is looking for at that point in time. So, those are all the problems. What do we do to fix it? First thing is probably don't look too closely at this AI guy in the middle here, because I don't think there's much fixing for him. There are a number of other image candidates for this that were a lot more horrific. I don't know what injuries he'd suffered. But yeah, I think that the biggest problem, and it directly related to the reasons that we have long-lived teams in the first place, is inertia, and that idea that if you have a happy, well-performing team, high-performing team, the last thing anyone's trying to do is to pull them apart. You're not looking for ways to get new people into the team, to change what the team is actually doing. From an architectural sense, you don't want to even think about whether it's in the right place. You're happy with the way things are. And if the team isn't any fun, my sixth point, it's actually got, my experience is it's got to get really, really bad before that person or the team takes action. So you're waiting for some kind of catastrophic event, some blow up within the team, but before you actually do anything about moving people around. There's in the 2011 book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, which I assume is familiar to a few people. This talks about cognitive biases, anchoring bias, availability bias, and I don't remember. there's many biases. I don't remember all of them, but the concept that has stuck with me the most from that book is it's in one of the earlier chapters. Daniel says the reason for writing this book isn't to help you overcome these biases. He says that their research shows that it's not possible because a lot of them are neurologically wired in for evolutionary reasons. But what the book tries to do is help you recognize when these things are happening and when you see other people exhibiting these biases. And I think that for me that relates really well to this concept of teams, because I think, as I said, I think it's really challenging when you're in the team, when you're working really closely, to step back and think about whether you are delivering the value you once were and whether there's a different way to organize. So, thinking about value, thinking about, this was a really weird image, by the way. I'm not sure what they're celebrating, but they're very happy about it. So one of the things you can do is to be self-critical. And I think if you're a delivery lead on an Agile team or you're working in an Agile team, I think there's some nice ins for this in terms of the Agile ceremonies that you are likely already doing. Instead of focusing a retrospective on what's good, bad, or what you want to change, then have a dedicated topic of how do we feel we're still delivering in terms of value compared to what we were doing 6 months earlier. And I think yes, it's a really grown-up question to ask inside the team, but I think if you're a leader in an organization and a team comes to you and says, we'd like to put some time in your calendar to talk about the fact that we think that the £1 million a year investment in the team is no longer delivering value, it might not be a meeting you want to go to, want to attend, but you'll turn up because that's a pretty powerful message. So I think that's something that you can do within a team to try and at least start thinking about the problem, at least start thinking about whether you're still set up for success, delivering the way you should be. And I guess as a leader, you can ask your teams to introspect themselves, and I'll ask them when the last time was they ran those kind of exercises. The architectural alignment, I think this one is a bit tricky because the way I see it, as I said earlier, the way I see it, evidence is often through the number of dependencies slowly creeping up. It's not it's not a cliff edge scenario. It's something which happens. It can be quite subtle over time. So, again, having really good tracking of your interactions with other teams. Are you still able to deliver independently at the speed that you're hoping for? Has that gotten worse over time? Making friends with the enterprise architects if they're not close to your team already. If they're not really deeply involved and you go to them and say you'd like to have a conversation about enterprise architecture and how it fits with your team, they'd probably be shocked a little bit and then quite overjoyed that someone's interested in that topic. So I think that's a good thing to do. Domain-driven design can be a way of modeling your space in the organization, seeing if that's changed. Maybe there's as I said earlier, that maybe with the example with the timesheets, the invoicing, it's time to rethink about your team structure and bring in some of the teams you're working closely with that you're dependent on or are dependent on you, and start brokering that conversation. Yeah, and if your team, this is the not having the right skills to deliver anymore. If you're finding that you've got, if you have a good understanding of the flow of work through your team, and you start to see where the bottlenecks are, where the constraints are, if you see that everything is stuck in analysis and you're spending all your time there, maybe you don't need the 4 front-end developers that you had in the team when you started, and maybe more analysis capacity is needed now for more of there's some trickier use cases that you're now dealing with. And again, I think it's easy to spot that if you're capturing the data to begin with. And then the obvious fix is to make it easy for people to move around teams. And part of that, I think, is having an organizational culture which fosters that movement and that championing people when they put their hand up to move to new places, which is really leads into the problem with the knowledge lockup. And I see this in a lot of organizations where people get really, really comfortable and happy in their team. The team's delivering well. And actually, a lot of organizations become really worried about losing knowledge from particular teams, especially if you're a high-performing team and you're delivering something which is incredibly valuable. The timesheet system now underpins your entire organization. You've pivoted from whatever you're doing before. You're now selling timesheets to the world, saying that you're the person the product manager who has been working on that for 3 years now wants to move onto something else. The organization can get I've seen organizations get really concerned about that. And I think that points to a lack of succession planning, or just a lack of deliberate knowledge sharing while the team is running, and a lack of, but yeah, you lose fluidity in your organization. It becomes a real challenge to hire. And I think part of that, overcoming that, really needs to start with changes in a culture that comes from leadership, which champions people moving between teams, makes it available. Publicizing internal job postings can be a way of making this visible. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that organizations recognize that. And somewhat related to that, I love this idea that a long-lived team, as I said, a long-lived product needs a long-lived team that supports it. And I've seen so many examples where the culture of the team outlasts any individual members on that team. And I don't think that's recognized enough, because there's this dependency on single individuals. And I have never seen an example in my career where a key individual has left a high-performing team and the team's fallen apart. It will be okay. It might not feel like it when the person is moving on, but my experience is it is fine. So I think there's a bit of a leap of faith there, but there's some evidence that shows that it's fine. The echo chamber problem, by its nature, this is one which is almost impossible for the team to fix themselves. This is where, as a leader of teams, as a leader in an organization, you probably need to do some work to step in. Again, the culture of knowledge transfer, removing that knowledge lockup can prevent this from happening, but this is a really tricky one to take action on within the team. It's also, psychological safety can play a role here, because if the psychological safety is low within the team, then I think the echo chamber becomes louder. It becomes more of a problem sooner, because people aren't bringing new ideas to the table. And finally, yeah, if the team isn't fun, it's a similar problem, similar solution to the two previous ones, where just make it easy for people to move. If there's a blameless culture within the organization, you can say, this isn't working for me. Yes, these 2 people that have worked on 3 high-performing teams before have now come together in this team, and it's just not working. Sometimes that's fine, sometimes that happens. Again, recognize it, take action to change it and move on. So these are the 6 things that for me are the problems that long-lived stable teams cause for in an organization. I think there's different ways of addressing these internally and from within the team and from outside. If you're able to do that, then what you end up with is, this is what a good team looks like. A good, long-lived, stable team is one that exists for a very clear reason, and that reason can be continually restated. It's unlikely to be the same reason that they existed for 12 months, 2 years ago, but the team is aware that they need to, that they have changed, their remit has changed, and that's a good reason for that team to stay together. It's a team which isn't afraid to change its shape or disband. And I guess when I'm talking about a team now, it's no longer a group of people. It's more of a concept or a culture. So that's what a healthy, long-lived team looks like. It's one where there's fluidity in people passing through it, and in the skill set that they bring, and perhaps also the remit, what the product is, what that team is delivering. Again, if that happens very, very often, very, very frequently, that changes very frequently, it's a sign of probably poor strategy in leadership, or the organisation is not in a great state. And the architectural problem. The team is constantly on the lookout for where these dependencies are increasing, and recognising that it's important to keep looking at how the team's set up and how you fit into how you're working with others. And a lot of this, for a team to be high performing, for a team to be delivering well, it needs that organisational support, and so a lot of that is in terms of people, the ability for people to move around and share skills. So finally, what you can do in a team: be self-critical, really question, are you delivering value? Are you set up for success? Do you have enough the data to show whether you're still performing at the level you're continuously improving the way you're delivering? As I said, a culture of high psychological safety in the team is crucial to avoid some of those internal challenges, particularly the echo chamber. And as a leader or a leader of the organisation, invest in people, make intentional rotation a thing. If someone's been on a team for 12 or 18 months, make it easy for them to say that they'd like to do something different. If they've been there these are somewhat arbitrary, if they've been there for 2 or 3 years, start asking pointy questions about, is it time to share some of that knowledge with the rest of the organisation? I think it's up to each organisation to decide how far they take that, whether they make it, whether it's mandated or not. But regardless, make change normal and expected for teams. So yeah, if you take nothing else away from this, it's just keep questioning whether your team is set up for success, is delivering the value that you want to be, that you were delivering originally. I think it's interesting to think about what AI can bring to this. Not ready to talk about using AI to form teams and do team structural design, but if AI speeds up our ability to deliver value, then maybe that will be an accelerator for a change in shape of teams. So, I think it's an interesting problem to think about, and something important to keep in mind. So that's it for my talk. That's what I think the big problems are with high-performing teams, with long-lived teams. The reason I did this talk is because I've seen this for a couple of decades, these kind of challenges in organizations, but it's not something which I hear people talk about very much. And I spoke to a few people before I wrote the talk, and the ideas seem to resonate quite a bit. So that's why I did this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. Lovely bit of creative destruction in teams. Go on.
Sorry, just before questions, actually I would love some questions, especially if someone's got questions about what are the challenges of implementing some of this. But also, my children think that I spend all day just talking to people about whatever I want. So if I could just get a photo to prove that I've left my desk once in a while, that would be great. So, thank you. Whoop. There we go. Thank you.
Marvellous. Any questions on teams, team structure, when people should move on? Right.
Hi, I'd probably say my team is in that zone with someone who's been on the team, for instance, for 8 years. And, the feedback is we're great performing team, it's going really well, let's not change it. I joined 6 months ago, 6 months ago, and different views. When the business doesn't want to change, though, how, as a semi-junior person, how do you bring that constructively to leadership?
So, I think a lot of the challenges that I talked about, there are, if you spin it around, that's what are the benefits of if you didn't have these challenges. So, knowledge lockup, I think, is a really good one because, yeah, you can point at a high-performing team and say, this team is amazing, why would you want to change it? And say, well, if there's 7 high-performing people in this team and we took 4 of them out and put them in other teams who are not particularly high-performing, there's a good chance that we can try and improve 4 other teams. Then you've got 5 high-performing teams in your organisation. So, again, it can be very scary for leaders to see that, but I think there's some good evidence that people that have worked in a high-performing team and seen what good looks like are able to transfer that thinking to other teams. And so if your leadership management is just focused on that one team, I think it's going to be a hard sell. But if you can get to the point where you're able to have a conversation around the broader benefits to the organisation, then it can be quite compelling.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Yeah.
I guess if you can find the person that's responsible for improving organisational team quality or skills quality, then they might have a broader remit and be more receptive to that kind of conversation. Sorry.
So one part of a high-performing team is, I guess, kind of the culture. The other part is often domain knowledge. How do you kind of deal with that and being able to bring new people in and bring them up to speed and have that turnover? And I think I talked about people or leaders being reluctant to break up a high-performing team, but sometimes it's not just because they're performing well, it's because of a fear that all of the domain knowledge is in 1 or 2 people in that team. And I think that's the way to address that is similar to the knowledge. It is that knowledge lockup, being intentional about spreading the knowledge, even if it's just within the team or it's being intentional in. So if you've got a team of 7 people, I don't know why I keep using 7, it's an odd number for a team. If you've got a team of 7 people and they're all super domain experts, saying we're going to take all of them and switch in 7 new people, it's probably not the best idea for your organisation. But if one of those people move to another team and you stage it over a number of months, I'd be shocked if it wasn't okay. But yeah, also being a bit more intentional about that. About releasing that knowledge. There's a lot of financially regulated organisations have something they call compliance leave, where some of the senior people, you have to go on holiday for a 2-week block, and your accounts are all locked during that time, so that it's to try and discover any fraudulent behaviour, but it also means that you can't rely on anything that person was doing in that while they were at their desk, at their job. So it forces the team to know how to cope when those people aren't around. Again, it's an intentional thing. You can try and push it just in the team, but you really need some support from leadership. And again, I think similar arguments about your organisation as a whole will be better if you have more fluidity in people, and you can reshape your teams to meet your demand.
I have a question. So first of all, I think it's a very brave concept because normally you think that, okay, well, if it's a high performing, that's a drain for any manager, but it's kind of like giving a thought. One thing that was quite striking for me was like when you said bringing work to the team, and I'm just wondering how that works in a public sector, because you will be having a team, and most of the time it will be the same team and it will never change at all, and they will be there forever, for many years, for many generations. How do we break that cycle? Thank you.
So I did ask for people to ask questions about the challenges of implementing this, and that one reason for that is because I think that's a really difficult challenge in some organisations, and I'm lucky, I guess, that I work in a consultancy, and organisations that engage us, one of the reasons they do that is to give them the ability to flex up and down the capacity they have. And it means that when, as consultants, we're not precious about being on a team for a long time. We're not looking, we're not looking to protect our job in that organisation. So in an organisation where your job is defined by the team that you're on, I think that can become really, really difficult. And again, this isn't something you can solve within the team. This needs organisational change, and it needs a sophisticated, grown-up approach to what staffing means. And I think what that might mean is you end up with a pool. Say you've got 100 people that work across different teams in the organisation. Maybe it means that demand at a point in time means there's only work for 90 people. You end up with slack in the organisation. But actually, there is really good evidence to say that if that kind of slack in an organisation actually makes for a much better organisation in the long run. You've got, at any one point in time, you've got 10% of your workforce can focus on learning about the latest LLMs, looking at how the rest of the organisation can leverage AI. It means when new demand does come along and it's urgent, you perhaps have some capacity for some people who can pick it up. So I think, but that is quite a different way of looking at workforce management to a 100% utilization. This team has these people on it, and that's it. So I don't know if that's an answer, but it's not easy, I think, is the answer.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alan. Another round of applause for Alan.
Thank you.